and let's find out who the winner is of Best Editing of a Documentary. And our winner is Talk for Life, English as an Additional Language. Massive congratulations to Amel. I know you're joining us, I believe, from Australia, so thank you so much.
Overload of sensory input because of the new environment and the new language being spoken around them.
Okay, so I'm here with Amel Tresnjic, and he's the filmmaker behind a really fascinating feature documentary, Talk for Life, and actually won our festival a couple of days ago. Congratulations, Amel. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Steve. Much appreciated.
No, you're more than welcome. So, yeah, just a quick synopsis of this fascinating documentary, please.
All right, so I guess I have to go a little bit back. One of the reasons why I became a filmmaker was to be able to tell inspirational true stories of people who make a difference in other people's lives. So when it came down to Talk for Life, it kind of ticked off all those boxes for me, because the school and what they do through their programs, and really the whole humanitarian aspect of helping others to, you know, prepare them for life. That was really something that resonated with me to begin with. So the film is about a English language program. So it's an educational film that's based here in Melbourne at a primary school called Dandenong Primary School. And what they do is they have a lot of young refugees coming from all around the world. So whenever there's a conflict that takes place, a lot of refugees have to flee, to find safety and a better life. And they often end up at this school. And this school has about a cohort of 90% plus of refugees that have come from other countries. So what they've realized over the years is that they needed to have a specific program that looks after those students who are unable to speak the language, because they can't be just put into the classroom alongside English-speaking peers, because they're not able to understand anything. So what they've developed is a program that takes them out of the classroom and help them pick up the language so they are in par with their peers and be able to be successful in life, rather than just sort of left on their own devices. So the film is all about that program, the structure of it, how it works, how it came to be, how it evolved over the years, and it also follows the success stories of some of the current and past students that have been through the program and the impact that it made in their lives.
Oh, thank you for that. Because clearly you're not from Australia. I can hear the Australian there, but how long have you been in Australia?
So the film itself is, of course, quite personal to me as well, because I came to Australia as a refugee in 2001, and I didn't speak the language. So I had to go into language school, and it was the teachers and the educators here that, you know, really helped me learn the language so I have the same opportunities as everybody else. Because if you don't speak a language, and we often take it for granted, if we don't speak a language, we are unable to do anything with our lives. We're unable to express ourselves, unable to communicate, unable to, you know, fit into a new culture and a new way of life. And I went through that process as well. So this is quite a personal sort of thing for me as well. And I did that twice in my life, because I'm a refugee from Bosnia, and it was war-torn country as well back in the 90s, and we escaped as refugees to Germany. And I literally grew up in Germany, and my early sort of childhood education was simply being put into a classroom. And it took me about 8 months to actually pick up the German language, so I had the ability to communicate. So literally for 8 months I sat there in a classroom and I learned by observation and, you know, physical expression and all these things. And of course, being young, I was about 8, 9 at that time, I picked up the language very quickly. And once I picked up the language, I thought I would finally have the opportunity to start learning. But because there were so many other refugees coming in from Bosnia and they didn't speak the language, I became the school's translator, and I was literally taken out of the classroom for most of the day just to do everyday translations between the parents, their kids, and the school, just to make sure that they settle in.
Wow, no, really, I mean, amazing story, actually. And I know we touched upon this briefly earlier, that I went to Australia a couple of years ago. I still see Australia, very much like I've been to America quite a few times. But the similarity with me is I think they're both kind of the land of opportunity. But in fact, in my opinion, Australia even more so than America. And I've been lucky enough to go to quite a lot of countries, but it's one of those places that exceeded what I hoped it would be. And I think if you're young, because obviously you're clearly younger than me anyway, but if you are young I mean, if I was in my 20s now and I knew what I knew, I would go there tomorrow. Well, I wouldn't go there tomorrow because of COVID, but I'd go there as soon as I can, because it just seems to have this dynamism and potential that we sorely kind of lack in Europe now, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think anybody, you know, a lot of refugees that come to Australia, there's sometimes this stigma attached that, you know, the way media portrays it, that, you know, refugees are not productive members of society. And I think what the film does really, really well, and it's not really the film, I just captured the film, but what the school really, really does well is it demonstrates the opposite, because, you know, these students didn't come here thinking to themselves, oh, look at all these opportunities, I'm not going to take advantage of that. They all took advantage of that, and they worked with that to make something out of their life. And when you look back into their countries, or when I look back into my country, those opportunities were not there, especially post-war. And I think Australia really gives you, it is the land of opportunity. It gives you everything that you need to set yourself up for life. And I took advantage of that, and I got myself educated. As soon as I finished language school, I went into high school. I got an ATAR score, which is sort of the ticket that gets you into university. I went to university, I studied film and TV, and also studied animation as well, because I figured that's going to come in handy. So I did a double degree in both of those areas. And then from there, I went into the industry to start making films. With the right intention as well. I think what makes me often quite different from a lot of people that I've come across in the filmmaking industry is that I tend to want to work on projects that make a difference in people's lives, and something, you know, that's inspirational, something that's positive, something that has, you know, a good moral structure or a good message to take away from when it comes down to the stories that we create and the audiences that sort of take away from that. So definitely Australia has been absolutely wonderful, and I'm forever grateful, and so are a lot of other refugees when they've come here with all these opportunities. And Dandenong North Primary School is one of those places that welcomes everybody into their arms and looks after them. You know, they don't try to change their cultures, but they include their cultures in the whole process. The school, from my observation and just making the film, the school itself is like a perfect template of how the world should be. You know, you have people from all around the world, and they get along peacefully together, you know, and I think that's something we can all take away from.
No, thank you for explaining that really well. I absolutely agree with everything you say. And I know I asked this in the question I sent over to you, but you must have loads of different ideas that go rattling around through your head, or people make suggestions to you. I know you wanted to make this film anyway, but what was there kind of a tipping point, or was there, did something happen? You thought, actually, you've made other films. I know we'll touch upon that later. But what was the key point that made you realise that this is the one I really want to do? Was there like a moment?
There's definitely a moment, and for me it's always that moment, because I wouldn't want to do something without an inspiration. If I'm inspired about something, if I can resonate to that topic and that story, then I think that's an authentic way of storytelling rather than just doing it for the job and so forth. So for me, it's always been, you know, wanting to tell these kind of stories, to really create a platform for something good that's taking place and providing a voice to those people. And in this instance, through my business, I was actually commissioned by the school to come in to do a film to sort of do a historical record of their program and how it's structured, so they can use it as an educational film. I, of course, straight away put my hand up, because it ticks off all the boxes to the kind of films and the content that I want to create. And that's how I got involved in the process. So it started off originally being about a short 20-minute film that just demonstrates the essence of how the program is structured for sort of internal educational purposes, as well as to share with other schools. And then I guess my inspiration kicked in, and I realized that there's so many aspects of that story which needed to expand on, which kind of expanded into this 62-minute feature documentary, which covers not only the program but also the stories of the people that went through it and how that, you know, made a huge difference in their lives. And not to mention, to highlight the amazing staff, the teachers and the leadership at the school who, you know, go above and beyond every single day to really look after those kids and set them up for life. And that's to me humanitarian work. That's to me the most inspirational aspect of that.
Thank you. And I bet you've got hours and hours of footage that you
I
edited out.
do. I do because one thing that I like to do is for me the filmmaking is quite sort of natural. I
Yeah.
don't want to impose my thoughts, my ideas, or trying to control the outcome. It's really about just jumping onto the wave of what is and authentically represented for exactly what it is. You know, sometimes people may think some of the answers in documentaries in general might be scripted or put on. Not in this instance. In this instance, no one had the questions before. They were literally asked in the moment, and it's about just sitting down with them, you know, getting into the interview and just asking the right questions to really find the key of what makes people do what they do every single day. So it's quite natural, and the whole process and the whole story is telling itself, and I'm sort of just the observer capturing all of that and putting it together.
Oh, fantastic. And how do you juggle it? Because I know you teach, I believe. So I imagine you've got a very, very busy life. Where do you find the hours to do all this? Because I know anything to do with filmmakers. Obviously, I've spoken to hundreds. It's really time consuming. So how do you plan it?
Absolutely. So I teach here at Swinburne University, which is obviously in Melbourne, and I coordinate and teach a fundamental course. And the fundamental course is all about learning the basics of filmmaking. So it's really a course that's designed to allow students who come in who are sort of curious about the filmmaking and storytelling, but they're not sure what it is. And the course is designed to really give them all these experiences of doing sound design, writing, directing, filming, editing, animation, all of that, to sort of help them find what makes them tick, what makes them really passionate about. And I dedicate 4 days a week towards that. And I love teaching. I sort of developed a passion of teaching throughout sort of my journey into the film industry.
Yeah.
And I recognize that the documentary filmmaking aspect is it's teaching essentially. You do your research, you collect large amounts of data, and then you sort of distill the wisdom into a film or a documentary that we call, which people have the ability to learn something and take away something from that. And through the sort of documentary process, I realized how much love I have for teaching, and I wanted to sort of give that back. I manage it really, really well. I'm very selective about the projects that I do through my business for clients, as well as the personal projects that I do. But I think I got a pretty good balance, because I think the key is to really have that passion and that drive. Then hours and time and balance is no longer an issue, because you really know what it is that you want to do with it, and that sort of transcends that.
Oh, wonderful. And talking about the research again, I remember speaking to, this is a typical example. I remember speaking to a documentary where two stories come to mind actually very quickly. One was this gentleman I spoke to that took him 6 years to research for filming, which apparently, okay, I know it's unusual, but I've heard people it can take a long, long time. Another guy, he'd been filming a documentary for over 25 years, and that was the Arab-Israeli conflict. But anyway, that aside, but in all seriousness, the research, it can be very, very time consuming. I mean, I know you've got personal experience in this, but still you've got to research it, because you've got to work out who you're going to speak to, what the background is, what story you're going to tell. I mean, how do you sort of plan for that?
All right, so the process of research, I think one thing that I've developed over the years is I've recognized that the less you're trying to control something, the better it is. So when it comes down to the research, I mean, in instances like for Talk for Life, the research kind of tells itself. So, I knew what the purpose of the film is. The purpose is to capture the program in its essence, how it functions, and to serve as an educational tool. And the way I structure my questions around that really helps sort of develop that structure. And often with documentary films, you don't really have the answers yet, because it's part of the research. So the interviews themselves, I believe we interviewed about 20 people altogether, is really the essence of all that research and their experiences and their research and their ability to observe the success of a student from, let's say, starting the program itself at the start and finishing the program. And then we also measure it further into the distance of students coming back after they graduated from university and they've become teachers, doctors and all that sort of stuff, and then putting it all into the documentary form. So I think the film, in a way, researches itself. And with documentary, I often just allow it to be based on the answers that we get rather than trying to control a particular direction. So the research was actually quite easy because it happened in the interviews, in the process. And once I've had all these interviews, which go for about 20 to 30 minutes each, some even longer, because we get into sort of the groove of the conversation, then in the editing process, I sit down and then I'll rewatch all of that all over again, making notes, making an editing decision list. And then I think the story comes from there. So the research literally is sort of on the go in the process. And me sort of being almost sort of a curious kid in Disneyland, walking around the school, interviewing people, asking all the right questions, my own curiosity of wanting to learn how it's all put together. And I think all of that sort of gets captured, and then the research is there, and then it sort of falls into place in the editing process. But outside of that, I can totally relate to other filmmakers working on projects for 6 years and more. There is actually a documentary film which was initially my original first ever feature documentary, which I sort of embarked on to create, and I'm still in the making of it. And that was about 10 years ago. Because I really want to make sure, and it's a big topic, it's a topic about life, the meaning of it, the purpose of it, all of that. And it's not something that I can answer within a couple of months of research. It's something that I think, in order to be told authentically, needs more time. So it just depends what the subject is and what the focus is, but I think it's really important to really represent it authentically rather than having a sort of limited view as a filmmaker. Because we as filmmakers, we in a way are dictators, and what it is that we show to our audience is our perspective of how we see things. And I think that's not the best way to go about it. I think the best way is to not be that person and trying to be the person that's talking about it, the person that's representing it, the topic itself, and find sort of a way in from that angle to authentically bring out the essence of whatever the subject matter is.
Oh, brilliant. And it's funny that filmmaker I was telling you about that took like over 25 years to make it, about the Arab-Israeli conflict, what was really fascinating for me was, half amount of time, he said what he'd actually done is transition from 16 millimeter, through to Betamax, then obviously ending up with digital. And, it's weird because, of course, he's gone for the whole gamut of all the different formats.
That's right, because the technology is changing all the time.
But he said something else which was really fascinating. And it was only a couple of years I spoke to him. He said, the thing is, Steve, what's really good about now is if someone's in the right place and they've got a mobile phone, it's very difficult for people to lie now, because if you've got someone that's videoed it, recorded it, they can either upload it to social media or they can send you a copy. He said, so that makes my story I'm trying to tell much easier because they'll send me the footage. And he said, and that's a real bonus. And of course he's right, because obviously the world has shrunk. Like I'm talking to you now, it's incredible. It's like you're sitting next to me. So can we talk briefly about, because this film has won loads of awards, but Crossing Over, which I think was your first one in 2012, has had the most phenomenal amount of YouTube hits. I know you said earlier off recording that it's actually grown massively, even more than that. So tell us a little bit about that, and because the whole reaction to it.
Absolutely. And that really sort of allowed me to grow as a filmmaker as well, to sort of observe the impact our work can have in other people's lives. And I think that was a good experience for me at a young age, just coming out of film school and just being really ambitious to tell stories. Originally, I was actually working on the one that I'm still working on right now that I mentioned earlier. And it's a film about people having experiences that sort of allows them to question the deeper meaning of life, where you sort of run the rat race and then suddenly you stop and you look back and you wonder, is this the direction of life that we need to head into? And you sort of start thinking about, more about, where did I come from? Why am I here? And what happens after we die? And that became a really interesting topic to me that I wanted to explore. And just when you kind of put that intention out into the world, the right people come to you with all the answers. And this is where it sort of began to form into a documentary, and I started interviewing people. And, I was probably around 30% into the filmmaking of it. And this was around the year 2012. And then the topics left, right and center on the news media wherever you turn, they're all talking about this doomsday, end of the world day, end of the world. The Mayans have said this, the Mayans have said that. We've all heard it a while back. And I thought I'll embed some of these questions into the documentary that I'm doing, just because these people I was interviewing were very knowledgeable, and there was sort of understanding of some of the changes that are happening on the planet from multiple sort of perspectives, you know. And I embedded some of these questions into it in the hope to make a short little 5-minute, 10-minute explainer video that I can upload to YouTube so people have another perspective to look at things differently. Because there was a lot of fear around that time where it was actually quite horrific when you look at some of the things that have happened as a result of how media has conveyed it. There was suicide groups being organized. People were really believing that narrative that the world's going to come to an end and that's it. And everyone was pointing at the Mayan calendar, and no one bothered to actually interview someone from the Mayan community to find out what that calendar is all about. And I thought I'll make a little short video, and as I started doing the research, looking deeper into it, and I recognized a bigger and bigger picture of it, that it sort of turned into something much, much bigger than I planned. And it ended up being a 93-minute feature-length documentary, which was always intended to be released for free on YouTube so people can get another perspective about the whole event. And it focuses on multiple topics, you know, from, you know, looking into the meaning of life, to meditation, to how we affect each other with the decisions that we make. It goes into the media and how the media has an agenda to, you know, put a lot of fear into people and scare them. And then it sort of transcends that and looks at the bigger picture, which has sort of a really positive, inspirational message about how we all need to come together and we create our realities collectively. And I put that up on YouTube, and it just exploded from there. It just went viral within a few days, and it's just been traveling all around the world. And I've received, in the first 3 years, probably around 50,000 emails from people telling me what the film meant in their life, because it allowed them to have a voice of reason. It allowed them to listen to something that they may have felt from their own perspective, but it wasn't validated anywhere in the media society that we live in today. So that was quite inspirational to me, just to listen to all these stories, and it was really positively received on YouTube, especially with the online world. And you know, everyone has the ability to comment and have an opinion. It was really, really well received, and it made quite a huge impact. And it sort of involved humanity in the process of it as well, to start doing something as well. So the film ended up being translated into 9 languages, but just people from all around the world who speak English, and they loved and resonated with what they heard, and they wanted to translate it for their own communities. So I was just one guy on the other end, sitting there in my tiny little apartment on a computer in my bedroom with my office right there, communicating to the rest of the world and having this amazing impact, which really sort of helped me understand how important it is for us to really take responsibility for what we do and really utilize our time to do the best that we can do to help inspire the goodness in the world. And that's really sort of the essence of the film, which the last time I did a count with multiple uploads, I think it's got around 4 million views.
Amel, that is fantastic. Thank you very, very much.